Writers, happy Monday. Welcome back. Hi, Ted.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Good.
Are we about to do another little check-in to see how everybody's doing in their business?
Yeah, I thought about this, that, we brought in this VUCA last week and we talked about that, which also got my mind thinking around, even outside of VUCA, there's something that I do rhythmically with business owners and executive teams and have been for, longer than a decade. And many people out here that we're talking to today probably have heard of this acronym. And to be honest with you, it was an acronym that for a minute there, I thought it was overly used and misused, or not properly used, because it created a great discussion, but there was no action. And I'm going to tie that in a knot in a minute. But the acronym is SWOT, and it is widely used. If you've never heard of it, it stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Now, I believe a facilitated conversation, or what we're recommending for you today to do today. And look, I typically, when I say rhythmically do these, there are some clients of mine that want to do them quarterly, some want to do semi-annually, and some want to do just yearly, right? Now, we're talking to you in August. So we're not at the end of third quarter or at the beginning of a quarter. But what I'd say to you is that you should be implementing this into your flow. And whether it be semi-annually, whether you do it monthly, I don't care, but it is a way, and I'm gonna use the same language that I did around VUCA. It's a way to slow down, analyze what's going on, right? And the thing that I'd say about, because as a solopreneurs, there is people out there growing small businesses, there's not a huge distinction between life and your business. There's not this big gap there. And so when you do this SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, look at the whole picture. Look at your life, look at your business. And here's what I'd say about the discussion that you're going to have with yourself, or that if you bring in other people. So if you have business partners that you're going to bring in, strengths, right? Typically during a SWOT, you don't spend a ton of time on strengths, right? Because you're looking for, what's wrong. You're looking to improve. Now, it doesn't mean it's not equally as important.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the point that I want to make here, is that we need to celebrate the wins, right? We need to celebrate what's going really well. And there should be some action around those things, right? Not just the celebration, but doubling down on certain things that are going really well in our business. Maybe we're not fully leveraging an identified strength. Maybe we're not putting enough time, energy, and attention into a certain strength. We're just kind of like taking it for granted that it's working, but we're not learning how to leverage it. So that's an important element of the SWOT.
I just want to say that quickly, Ted, as well. I think that so few people, that as a human nature, I think we focus so much on what we don't do well and so little on what we do well, right? Like how many people, if you go up to them and you ask them, what do you do better than anybody else? Can they answer that question?
Yeah.
Because nobody spends that time praising themselves and thinking about that and looking at that, right? So I think it is a great one to start at.
It's a great point. And, we could probably go on a little bit of riff on this one. There's a lot of debate about that in self-development or leadership development or whatever. Like, if you had 5 characteristics, should you spend your time developing your 2 weakest ones, or should you lean into the top 3, right? And there's a lot of debate about that. I'll give my 2 cents on what you just said, because I think what you said is an important thing. I chose many years ago to lean into my top 3. Right. And I built my whole business around what I thought I was good at, but also what I was passionate about, and decided I'm not good at technology. I'm not good at social media. And guess what? I don't spend a lot of time a week, actually very little, if any, trying to become the person that knows how to leverage that. I'm more human connection and whatever. And so it's a great point that you bring up, and one that what people should consider during this SWOT and even outside of the SWOT.
Yeah.
Typically in a SWOT, though, the weaknesses and opportunities is where the bulk of the conversations goes, because now people are trying to identify the gaps in their business. And it's not so much beating themselves up as recognizing, hey, here's some things we're missing. Here's some things we're not leveraging. Here's some gaps in our approach to getting clients, et cetera, et cetera. And what you'll find is, as you list weaknesses, right next to a weakness is an opportunity showing its face, right? Like you say, hey, we're deficient here, but the opportunity is to do X and kind of mitigate that weakness. And then the next thing that you would be.
Sorry, I was going to say something. I think as well how it can also link up, because sometimes maybe that weakness is an opportunity, but it's just not you or your team that does it, right? Like, so for you, your weakness was like technology or whatever. Let's say use accounting as an example. You hire somebody to take on that piece of it, right? So that it becomes feeds into a larger opportunity. So that weakness might also just show up for you of like, where should I be bringing other people into the fold? Or you look at a team, right?
And I'll get to that part, because that part's the end part. That was the part that I thought that over the years I realized this is what's missing in the SWOT for many people, right? Which is the solution, the action, right? Like when you identify the weaknesses, and then the next thing is the opportunities. When you start recognizing, not all the opportunities are going to come from the weaknesses, but you're going to start to say, hey, here's where an opportunity may be a behavior of yours that you're not doing enough of. An opportunity may be a certain, business sector that you're going to go after because, going back to what we talked about last week, we see, to your point, there's a lot of businesses thriving. Do I have any relationships with any of those businesses that are thriving in the VUCA times? Maybe not. Maybe I need to start leaning into some of that, right? And then the last piece is the threats, which honestly, I typically don't spend a lot of time in the threats. I take us back to what we talked about last week. The threats for me are sort of the uncontrollables, right? The markets, we can't necessarily do a lot about them, but we have to be mindful of them, as we talked about last week with the VUCA. Now, bringing it full to what you had just talked about, right? Which is the important thing. The thing that was always missing years ago now, when I would facilitate a SWOT, and that was partly my fault, right? Like I wasn't picking up on it, but I would watch people do SWOTs and they would just have this great conversation, and that's all it was a conversation. And so to me, the most important element of a SWOT is ending it with 3 to 5 things only, not 10, not 15, 3 to 5 things that are going to be the biggest bangs, that are going to fill some of those gaps in the weaknesses or the opportunities. So that now I'm bringing in what you had talked about, which is you identify this weakness, and it may not be you, the one that has to do it, to Jade's point, right? It may be that you have to get somebody in to come in and do it. But if you don't have those 3 to 5 points, it's just a discussion. It was a good discussion, but it's not really bringing in the full. How are you going to mitigate this? The last thing I'll say on this, the reason I use rhythmically, the people that have taken, or the executive teams or business owners that I've worked with that have taken advantage of the SWOT, have done it rhythmically over a course of years. And now they look back and they go, hey, we did one in August and we came up with these 3 things. Then we did one in November, and we started with, what did we do with those 3 things we agreed upon, the actions? Did we do them, and did they have impact on our business? Then in November, they readjust things, they go through it again. It's not as cumbersome of a conversation because they've done it three months ago. And then they go, all right, well, we didn't execute on the one, let's execute on that one and then add 2 more. And then they look back over the course of, a year and a half, 2 years, and they're like, wow, look at the impacts that we've had on our business. And that's why that word rhythmically doing these, if you institute this into your business, I guarantee you it's going to have an impact.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think there's something huge to documenting something, like the documentation allows for reflection that I don't feel like often can happen when it's not documented. Because I'll be very transparent, and at AWAI with my team, and when I used to be a part of another team, this is how we do reviews, right? It's built into our review process. And I would be pushed to where is the opportunity? Like, what more can you do? What more do you want to do? Like things like, and I would write down things and then kind of forget about it. And then when you look back and you realize that you did those things, you made that happen, that becomes so much a part of what you do, that unless you document it, you kind of like forget that you ever even didn't do the thing before, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
And I think something else you said, you kind of said it in the beginning, Ted, where the actions don't only have to come from like the threats and the weaknesses and opportunities, but often strength, because look at you and your business, right? You knew your strengths, and that's where your actions started to create your business based on what those strengths are. So I think that one is huge as well. Yeah. Know your team, know what's going on,
Yeah, that's it. I mean, so this kind of blends itself in with what we talked about last week in a different way. But it absolutely supports it. So now 2 weeks in a row, what we've said to you is that you need to slow down and look at your business. And we've just tried to give you some framework around these two things, that you have to be business minded, right? And you have to slow down and have a strategy. And strategy, I will say this. Strategy, some people are like, well, I'm not strategic, and strategy is like this big thing. Well, strategy is not some big elusive word. The strategy may be to call 4 people in a day. Like, that's a strategy, people. Like, it's not like some, you have to be this crazy business guru to come up with a business strategy for your business. But it is what it is. Right? It's action. Yeah.
That's all. Yeah. And let me tell you, there's a lot of writers who don't think that they're businesses or business owners. I'm here to tell you, you are a business. You are in business, right? And it's like, what does this look like right now? Like, you might have nothing to analyze, but where you want to go, where you want to be, and that's where your actions will now be based off of.
It's such an important point you make. Again, like, this could be a whole nother call. Like, you're a business person. You chose to figure out how to make money writing.
Yeah.
Yes, you're a writer, but you're a business person. And if anything, in the past couple of weeks here on these Monday morning Jumpstarts, we're talking as business people. We're not talking, whether you're a writer or whatever, these are things that business people do that are successful. They recognize their times that they're in, they pivot, they double down on their strengths, they slow down, they look at their business in a very strategic ways. I mean, some of the best businesses across the country have what they call QBRs, quarterly business reviews. The executive team goes away, they lock themselves in a hotel room somewhere for 4 days, and they dive deep into what's good and what's bad about the business. That's all we're proposing that you do today with the SWOT.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so everyone's going to write down their SWOT. They're going to schedule when they're going to do this in their lives, and they're going to take 3 to 5 actions right now to move forward in their business, because you are a business owner, everybody.
Amen.
Awesome. True. Thank you, Ted. Bye, everybody.
Cool. Take care.